crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com, and today I'm here with my 10 cards 1 kit with the Love from Lizi August kit. There are some pieces of cardstock in the kit, but they are European sizes, and so it might be a little bit different than what you're used to working to if you live in the US. And I was not able to get 2 standard size A2 cards out of it, but I was able to get 1 out of each piece of cardstock, which worked out well for me because I wanted to be able to use some of the pieces of cardstock to create elements on my card. So what I did was I cut a 4 1/4 by 11 piece off, and then I had a 4 by a little more than 11 piece left. And so I was able to cut that down to a different size, and I could use it to add layers to my card. To get started with the first card, there were 2 pieces of vellum from the kit that I had mentioned in the video that I thought would work really well for cards, and so I decided to start with the first piece of vellum that I really liked. To adhere the vellum down, I decided to use Elizabeth Crafts tape. I have heard that the Xyron sticker maker also tends to work really well for this, but what's nice about the Elizabeth Crafts tape is that you can, piece it together to fit any size, and you can also buy it in sheets, but I think the Xyron would do a great job too. I just don't happen to have one. And I laid out the tape such that it covered the whole back, and then I'm trimming the excess tape off. And since it's just 2-sided tape, I can then use that to adhere this piece of gold shimmer cardstock to my card base. So I'm still trying to make use of that tape and not just tossing it. I did find this stuck to my scissors quite a bit. I recommend using non-stick scissors and kind of just feeling out what's best for you. These scissors do clean up really easily, so I wasn't worried about that. As mentioned, it is a gold shimmer cardstock from the kit. It's a little bit hard to see here in the video. It looks kind of just like some brown cardstock, but between the shimmer of the cardstock and the foiling of the writing, I really felt like this card didn't need much else, and I kind of just left it there. My intention is for this to be a Thanksgiving card, just based on the sentiment. And so I already had 1 card done, nice, easy, fast card to kind of get things rolling. Another idea that I had mentioned from the unboxing was to stamp on the cork here. I thought that I would stamp a sentiment from the stamp set, and the sentiment that I intended to use the most from that stamp set is Made with Love, and in fact I believe that's the only one I use in this particular video, but I do have the stamp set to make a bunch more cards with. I'm just going to show 10 cards for today. I find that VersaFine ink works pretty well for stamping on cork. I've used it a few times in the past. I think that it's good because it's a nice, juicy, sticky ink, and you get a really good impression the first time, so you don't have to worry about a drier dye ink. However, because it's a partially pigment ink, it kind of has a tendency to sit on top of the paper, or in this case the cork. And that was important because it didn't dry very well. You may want to hit it with a heat gun, and that could help it dry a little bit faster. Or just not, leave the piece to the side and let it naturally dry and work on something else while you're waiting. I got a little bit anxious, didn't really remember that the pigment ink was going to dry, so kind of my own fault there, and I started trying to work with it and got ink on my work surface, and I think on a piece of cardstock or something. So I just want to give you the heads up so you don't make the same mistake that I did and don't get frustrated. There's 2 tiny hearts from the stamp set, and I filled in the tag because the Made with Love I thought went perfect with the hearts. And I'm going to just kind of stamp it randomly along, filling it out. I thought, well, cork could work well for a masculine card, but then the font and the hearts, they kind of, they weren't as masculine, so I don't know. I tried to do something a little bit more masculine, but I did struggle a little bit with this kit just because the fonts are a little feminine, but I did choose some a striped pattern paper. I went with the burlap that has some shimmer in it. I thought, burlap could possibly be, but I don't know that it really worked out to be a masculine card. However, it will be used, and that's really all that matters. I think that a majority of the cards that I make in this video will probably be for donating. And I have links in the video description always to my card donation resources, so if you're interested in donating your card, you should definitely check that out. I took a striped piece of the pattern paper from the kit and also this red piece that has some vegetables in a monochromatic tone. And in order to adhere this down, I am just going to use my ATG gun. I like it because it works well. And this is the part where I have a little bit of ink from turning it over and putting the adhesive down. And I just took my Tombow adhesive eraser and I was able to get it up because the Tombow adhesive eraser works better for pigment ink, which the VersaFine is. So I know that a lot of people recommend it in general, but I don't find that it really helps get dye ink off. I do think that it works pretty well for pigment ink though, so I do like having one. But yeah, so I just adhere that with the ATG. Like I mentioned, ATG, nice and strong, works with a variety of materials. Little bit of wiggle room, but not too much. In the stamp set, there were 4 different triangles that were inspired by some of the pattern paper that also came in the card kit. And I really liked these triangles, and I'm going to make 2 different cards with the triangles. The first thing that I decided to do was to stamp a bunch of triangles on the extra pieces of cardstock. I knew that I would cut them out and just make a pattern with it later. I wasn't 100% sure what I was going to do with it yet, but I just knew that I wanted to have those on hand. And again, the VersaFine does take a little longer to dry, so I thought I'll stamp them out, put them off to the side, think about it, and then they'll be dry and I'll be able to, work on the card. So what I'm going to choose to do to make the card look a little bit more interesting is I'm going to stamp the same pattern, because there's 4 different pattern triangles, so I'm going to stamp 3 patterns. And I'm going to stamp them in 3 different cardstocks. So all the yellow triangles are the same, all the red triangles are the same, and all the green triangles are the same. That way, when I am laying out the pattern, I can distribute the green triangles throughout, the red triangles throughout, and the yellow triangles throughout. And by distributing the color, I'll also have distributed the pattern because the pattern matched. Whereas if I made all the different patterns from all green cardstock, when I mix the green up, I might not mix the pattern up. I hope that makes sense, but that's kind of my logic for stamping all the same. However, I also knew that I wanted to take these same triangles and just stamp a super clean and simple card. Like I said, I definitely decided to make a few easy cards in the sense that they were quick to make. Because if I had a clear idea, I tried not to overthink it. I know that I'll make a ton more cards with this kit, or that I can make a ton more cards with this kit, just because there's so much in the kit. I can't even touch it all in one video, and I can easily make 10 cards without using some of it. So I decided to stamp a pattern of the triangles. I went for something really clean and graphic. I knew that it would be fun to color the triangles, but they also look really cool in black and white. And so I decided to go with the black and white. I still had the Made with Love sentiment stacked, so working from the top left to the bottom right, I stamped that down towards the bottom right-hand corner. The top left to bottom right thing tends to work pretty well in languages that read from top left to bottom right, because that's kind of how your eye naturally goes. It is naturally drawn to the top left corner of the page because that's where you'd start reading. So I like to, do my patterns in that direction as opposed to, maybe starting at the top left. And so I just stamped a fun pattern with the triangles and called that card done. And I really like how it turned out. I think that it could be used for a variety of occasions. It could be fun for the person who receives it to color it in. So I returned back to my triangles. And I wanted to do something different this time. I could have easily arranged them just like I did in that other card. I could have, did the top left to bottom right thing. But you just saw that, so why not mix it up and try something different? So instead of using the Made with Love sentiment from the stamp set, I'm going to use this Made with Love die. This is probably one of my favorite things in the kit. I just like the mix of the scripty words and the heart. I think that it's just like a fun die. I think it's large enough to be substantial element on the card. It could even be the focal point of a card. But for me, I really like the font. I like the mix of the script font with the more traditional font, I guess typewriter-ish sort of font at the top. But anyway, I'm going to stack a few of those Made with Love dies just to give it a little bit more visual weight, and then I'm going to start arranging the triangles. I was kind of inspired to arrange the triangles in a way that reminded me of a quilted pattern. Because quilts are often made with block and triangle elements, I thought I will arrange my triangles in a very in a repeating pattern, in a in a very blocky sort of pattern. So I'm going to go straight across the card with them. I've sort of varied them a lot when I use the plain stamp triangles, but in this case, it's going to be like a very definitive stack on top of each other sort of thing. I wish that I'd measured things out a little bit more, because I did create some areas where I was going to have really small triangle bits, and those were a little bit tricky to glue down. So my suggestion to you is, if you want to try something similar, to maybe lay all your triangles out first and not just like slap one down with adhesive and hope that it works out like I did, because you know, that's tricky. So be smarter than I was and try it out first. So here's where I wanted to pause, because I filled a good amount of area, but I knew I was going to need like little pieces to finish up. I thought, well, maybe I can get those little pieces by trimming this stuff off. So like trimming all the extra off, then maybe I could use one of those little extra pieces to fill in those last two triangles that I need in the two corners, at the two top corners there. And that did work out. I think one of the two I was able to use a scrap, but for the most part, that just didn't work out. I didn't have a big enough piece of the yellow or the right part of the yellow. So it was fine, because these triangles, of course, weren't hard to cut out. You could try cutting them with your Scan and Cut if you happen to have one, but again, because they're just triangles, they're pretty easy to fussy cut. I decided to leave a little bit of a border around them. You could also cut directly on the line, and I don't know if that would be easier or harder depending on your personal style. But once I have all those little pieces glued down and trimmed up, I'm going to be pretty much done with the card. I just thought, since there was so much going on the top of the card, a little bit of detail in the bottom would probably be helpful. So I took my We Are Memory Keepers corner chomper, and I just rounded the corners there at the bottom. So Love from Lizi kits always include really beautiful sequins, and makes me always want to just make a shaker card. So that's the next card that I'm going to make. I took some of the brown shimmer cardstock. There were 3 pieces of beautiful shimmer cardstock this time, and I cut a oval out of it. I generally try to use just the kit when I make 10 cards 1 kit videos, but for basic shapes, I think that makes sense to add in. A lot of us are going to have basic shapes. So here I also die cut the Made with Love die again, and I cut it out of black cardstock, but I put Elizabeth Crafts tape on the back before I did that, and it made it a little bit tricky to die cut, but it made it perfectly adhesive so that I could glue it onto that piece of acetate that I had used to cover the oval hole that I made, and that's going to be my shaker area. And now I'm going to take some thin foam tape and put it around the oval so that I can have an area for all my shaker materials. It's important that that area be completely sealed, so I'm going to make a rectangle that's completely sealed. I'm going to help myself with that by making sure that I put the 2 long pieces of foam tape down, and then I'm going to go across, and I'm just going to push it into one side and then trim it off on the other. So rather than like measuring or trying to guess, I'm just going to lay it down and chop off the extra bits. It does probably waste a little bit of foam tape, but I was usually able to use the foam tape somewhere else on the card to give it a little bit more stability. So like underneath there, I needed a second row of foam tape. So I'm using my scraps to build that little row underneath at the bottom. Well, it's actually at the top now, but it'll be the bottom of the card. I used 2 layers of foam tape just so that my sequins have more room to shake around. I've tried using 1 layer in the past, and I found that it just didn't move around enough for me. I really like a full shaker card. So here I'm going to put my shaker material in the sequin mix from the kit. The only thing was the sequin mix in the kit has this dark sequin, and I wanted a few less of the dark sequins just because I was going to use that Made with Love die cut in black, and I thought if there's too much black shaker material behind it, that might be a little bit harder to read. So instead, I took out some of those extra dark pieces and added in a few more light pieces. Even though my shaker card is pretty full here, I think that I would have enough materials to make another shaker card. So it's a pretty good amount of sequins, not too many. And as you can see, it shakes really well, has a nice fill there. I use the gold piece of shimmer cardstock to put behind it I thought that, may as well keep it shimmery and shiny since there's, the shimmer cardstock, the sequins, etc. However, when I turned it over and I looked at the front, I felt like it was a little boring. There was just too much of the brown cardstock. And again, since hopefully you will learn from my mistakes, because obviously I've already made plenty of them, I decided afterwards, not liking it, that I needed to add some ribbon. But this is a little bit trickier to do once you have adhered your panel onto your card. Now I have to try to tuck the ribbon behind the panel even though it's attached. It actually was okay because there was that foam tape, so the foam tape kind of like popped the panel off the card a little bit, and I was able to tuck the ends of that velvety ribbon in there. And then I thought I could also add some detail with these peel-offs that came. I believe they're the chocolate brown color. They are a brown color, but I think officially chocolate. And I thought, well, those will be a little bit easier because then I can just trim the ends off and I don't have to tuck them under. You could technically trim the ends off of ribbon, but especially with that velvety ribbon, I just thought it could fray and not look so nice, and I personally preferred tucking ribbon underneath. So that's what I did to add a little bit more detail. Now, of course, I had this brown oval die cut from that other card, and I thought, may as well use it right away, don't let it go in a scrap pile and forget about it. So I took another Made with Love black die cut, because apparently that's my favorite thing to cut the Made with Love out of, and I'm going to layer that on the brown shimmer cardstock. And I thought, I didn't really use a lot of the ribbons and fibers last time in the Love from Lizi kit, so I kind of I guess I overcompensated this time maybe, but I don't know, I like the cards. And I used a bunch of ribbon this time. So here's the burlap ribbon again. I'm going to come in with the velvet ribbon. I kind of like this. There was the ivory cardstock that's in the kit. There's a shimmer cardstock, the burlap, the velvet. I just liked the texture that was created by adding all these elements. It was just really interesting. Everything had a little special touch to it. And so, I also go with some of the peel-off strips, which are shiny. So again, adds another element. There's the shimmer, there's the shine, there's the velvet, the burlap, just I don't know, I thought it was cool. And that's, that's Lizi's genius, is that she's including all these interesting different kinds of material. In laying the peel-off stickers, if you have a little trouble keeping them straight, I have a grid mat, I have pieces of grid paper underneath me, but I think if you have a grid mat, that can help too, because you can either use some washi or low-tack tape to hold your card down while it's perfectly lined up with the grid, and then you can put the peel-offs down and make sure they line up with the grid lines on your sheet. You don't have to tape it down first, but that might be helpful because they could, your cardstock could slide and that would make it difficult. But yeah, using those grid lines that on your work surface is super helpful. If you don't have a work surface with grid lines, just a piece of graph paper will do. That might be something that you can find even in your kid's stash of homework goodies or something. And so I'm going to round the corners again on this. I thought since, it's a pretty simple background, that might be a nice detail. Plus, kind of when I get out the corner rounder, I tend to use it a few times. So I'm just going to stack that on there. I'm going to add a little foam tape behind it just because the velvet ribbon is a little bit thick and the burlap is also a little bit thick. So adding a touch of foam tape makes sure that my shimmer cardstock won't be lumpy. And this is some thinner foam tape. I use a variety of foam tapes. I kind of just use what I have on hand, what I'm able to find. I pick stuff up from the dollar store and the home improvement store or whatever, home office stuff, like Staples, you know what I'm saying. Anywho, I'm just going to kind of fuss with that a bit because I can't lay on anything straight today, which is why I had to fuss so much with those peel-offs and didn't take my own advice. And I thought, maybe it would have been better to use that gold cardstock there, but I think that you could see the Made with Love on the brown. So I'm ready to move on to another card. I wanted to try to challenge myself to use a few more different things from the kit this time. So again, like I said, obviously I can make a whole bunch of other cards with the stuff in the kit. I didn't use every single piece of pattern paper, but I want to show you some ideas for some of the fun things that Lizi included. So here I'm going to use the heart stickers. Now, this is another time when I made things more difficult for myself than they probably needed to be. I don't know if you're sensing a theme with this card kit and me. I don't know what was my deal that weekend. But here I'm trying to adhere this all directly onto a card base. And I think that it probably would have been easier to put it on like a layer. But again, didn't think of that. And also here, again, I'm trying to lay these hearts down in an interesting way, but because I didn't pre-measure and like think about where I was going to put things before I just started slapping them down, I found that I didn't like how one heart ended such that it was like fully on, and there was, I think it kind of looks better if there's a partial piece. And so this leads to me peeling off the hearts several times, and then even once I finally decide how to place them, and the way that I fix it is by making there's more space between the hearts, so now that heart on the left kind of hangs off the card just a bit, and I think, okay, good, I like it now. And I trim this up, and then later on I decide to change it, and I peel the hearts off of the cardstock again. But we'll get to that in just a minute. So I'd cut up this piece of cherry pattern paper from the kit, and I thought I'll lay that down to cover most of the card, but I do want a place for a sentiment. Can't stamp on top of the cherries because you wouldn't be able to read it, and the hearts are a little small for the sentiment, so I decided to cut a teeny tiny piece of red cardstock. And as you can see, while I love my Swingline trimmer for most things, my Guillotine trimmer there, it's not super great at cutting tiny pieces because you have to like squeeze your hands under that bar that holds the paper down and everything. So that is one strength of those like Fiskar trimmers. I think maybe like rotary trimmers. I don't know. I kind of just make do because I just like that I don't have to replace the blades. And so here I thought that my red piece was the right size, but turns out that it was just like a little bit off because again, trimmer's not super good at cutting tiny pieces, so I had to straighten it out a bit there. And then here I'm going to try to add some more of the cherry cardstock, and I'm starting to think ahead now, finally, and I am like trying to lay it down on the card and measure about where I need it to be. Made it, a rough estimate, well, not made a rough estimate, like I measured where I wanted it to be, put a little line, and then brought it to my trimmer. So, and now I'm going to get like super fussy with this card because things just aren't looking quite right to me. Like, why are the hearts extending past where everything else is? Because I made all the pattern paper only 4 inches wide. Whereas if I had worked on a black piece of cardstock, then like if I, if I had worked on something else instead of directly on the card base, then my pattern paper would have been cut to the right size, or I could have just made my pattern paper the full size. I don't know. Anyway, I decide that I really want the hearts to be in line with everything else. So then I take a ruler and draw some lines on the hearts and peel up the hearts for like the 3rd time and trim them up so that it all makes sense. Again, this is another thing where I hope that you can kind of learn from what I did, come up with a good idea and think it through instead of just going at it. But that's kind of the nature of exploring with your card kit, and it would feel a lot less silly if I wasn't taping it and trying to explain it to you. So I'm going to stamp the sentiment again. I'm going to use VersaFine ink. It's my favorite black ink for sentiments just because it stamps so crisply and I almost never make a mistake with it. Like, it's never, it never gives you a partial impression like some dye inks. I get that with Memento and other things. Another one of the vellum pieces that I knew I wanted to use was this mint theme here, so this mint piece here. And so again, I'm just going to cover it with some Elizabeth Crafts tape in the back. I cut out, like I didn't show you the trimming around it because you saw that earlier. I paired it with some simple gold shimmer cardstock scraps that I had, and then instead of making it a traditional A2 size card, it needed to be a little bit shorter to fit in with my scraps, and I didn't want them to, take up too much of the card. So I then took my pencil and drew a little line about where I think it should be cut, and I'm also going to add a little bit of detail with the peel off strips again. I actually really love how the peel off strips kind of can just add a little touch of something so easily, and I can add them last minute, no problem. It's a little crooked there, but don't worry, I fixed that. But yeah, I'm enjoying that aspect of the peel off, just a little tiny detail that is quick to add. Another thing that was in the kit that I wanted to make use of, because again I wanted to show you some ideas for a bunch of stuff in the kit, was this metal frame that came with a piece of cardstock that it fit underneath it perfectly. And I thought, well, the metal frame would be perfect for using a bit of that twine too. However, if you put the twine underneath, then it was like it would go right over your label. So I wanted to pop up the label instead. So I trimmed up the label a little bit, and I'm actually going to put it over the twine. I went with some of the star and stripe paper again, just leaning a little bit more masculine. I'm not quite sure if I achieved it, but I tried. And I put the twine through. Then I have to adhere this metal embellishment onto the card. And it's really thin, so using my ATG gun didn't really seem like a good option. So I went with these Zotz dots, and they're like the super small ones. And even though they were small, I cut them in half. What was nice about the Zotz brand is because each Zot, each little glue dot thing, is in its own little plastic piece. You could cut them in half really easily, and half of a small was what I needed. And so I would cut it in half, I would push it down onto it, and then peel off its backer sheet. And I put on quite a few because the metal embellishment's obviously a little bit more heavy. And then I adhered it down onto the card, and I'm going to tape the twine to the edges. Again, I already had trimmed that down a bit, and I'm going to use foam tape again so that it doesn't get lumpy with that twine underneath it. And that's going to be about it for that card. Again, I'm trying to keep that one a little bit more simple because, like I said, I would attempt to make a masculine card. Did I succeed? You be the judge. Another thing that I said that I would try to do in the unboxing video, and then I kind of wonder, like, maybe I shouldn't be making all these promises, but here we are. So I said I would try to make a magnet because the Love from Lizi kit came with a sheet of thin magnet. I thought, well, it'd be fun if you could make a card that had a magnet on it. You could give it to someone and they could take the magnet off and put it on their fridge or whatever, and like, you know, card would serve double duty. And I thought, well, to make the magnet a little more substantial, I would use this piece of cork, but it was a tag. And I picked out a piece of the vellum. I thought it says cooking with love is good for the soul or something like that. I don't know, you guys can read, but I forget. And I thought that piece of vellum would look really cute put on top, and it could be made into a magnet because then that would be perfect for their kitchen. So I took the piece of cork, which was in a tag. I had to remove the metal piece in the tag, so I cut into the tag, I cut into the cork, and that allowed that metal piece to come out. And then I traced the cork onto a piece of black and a piece of ivory and the vellum, because I thought, well, if I put down the piece of vellum right over this, you're going to see the hole because vellum is see-through, or, you know, somewhat see-through, and so you'll see the hole. Didn't really want to see the hole. And sorry, that's what the cream is doing. That black was the magnet. I traced it on the magnet too. So I put the black magnet on the back, traced it from the cork. I put the ivory cardstock, traced it with the cork, and then this vellum piece. And because again, I wanted to cover the hole. The purpose was still the same, covering the hole in the vellum with the ivory cardstock. Layered it on. Now I have a magnet because, like I said, I glued the magnet onto the back. ATG, super strong, worked perfect for this. However, it has to come off the card. So that was another thing I wanted to consider. But I also noticed in the back of this vellum piece is the same pattern as one of the pieces of pattern paper. So to make the card coordinate, I thought, well, I'll cut that pattern paper for this. So I trimmed it down to just under a A2's card size, 4 by 5 1/4. Then I'm going to die cut a circle. So you see that here. I die cut a circle. I use some foam tape because my magnet's pretty thick. It's cork plus magnet, you know. It's getting there. So I thought I'll pop it up with foam tape so that it's not too lumpy. It doesn't like stick out really far on the card. And then I have the magnet there in the center as an embellishment on the card, but then can be peeled off. And so since I want it to come off, I'm just going to use removable adhesive. Keep it simple. These are removable like glue dots. I think that they work pretty well. I use them to attach gift cards to the inside of cards, and it never ruins the card. So I can then place that down. It'll hold pretty securely, but when they go to take it off, it'll come off easily. They'll be able to get the stickiness off the magnet And then that's it. That was 10 cards. I tried to fulfill all the promises that I said I would do in the unboxing video. So I hope that you guys enjoyed that. You got some great ideas. You're inspired to use your Love from Lizi kit that's on its way to you. But if you didn't get this month's kit, be sure to check the video description so you can figure out how to subscribe for next month, because these kits are jam-packed. Check out the unboxing video if you want to see all the supplies that I didn't even get to, because there's so much in this kit. You can also check me out on social media. Please like this video, give it a thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe to my channel for more crafting tutorials like 10 cards 1 kit, like 6x6 paper pad tutorials, and other fun stuff like that. Thank you so much for watching. Have an awesome day. Bye.